And what is up, everyone? I am Joe DeHoyos. I'm the host of Beyond the Woodline. Um, Real quick before we get started, I always like to talk to you guys about a little bit about what I do, and you guys might want to help out with that. Um, I'm the executive director for the joejdh Research Group, which is created and founded by William Joejdh. Some of you guys may or may not know him, but he's been in the field, man, over 40 years. I bet he's getting closer to 50 years now, but he's an awesome guy, great guy. He knew the Renee DeHenden and John Green, who were the pioneers of this whole Bigfoot research stuff, and um, his group. We have teams in Tennessee, New York State, California, Oregon, um, Florida, Oklahoma, Ohio. I'm not sure if I said Michigan, but Michigan for sure, and of course here in Texas and a couple other places. I'm sure I'm forgetting because I usually have a list here, but I didn't bring my notebook with me today, but yeah, if you guys are interested in helping out and wanting to participate in a group like that, man, let us know. We'll be happy to have you, and you can help out in any capacity. You don't have to get out into the field. We don't require a minimum time or a maximum time out in the field. If you can get out once, great. If you can't, and you want to do your research for behind your laptop or your cell phone, help us find witnesses and then uh, places that have a history of Bigfoot. You can even look up places for us. And if you have any ideas on or on techniques, on research methods, man, let us know. We'll try just about anything. So if you're interested, hit me up at beyond.woodline@gmail.com, and yeah, we'll talk and we'll get you started. And with all that being said, I have today Luke. He is a Bigfoot researcher out of Indiana. Is that right?
Yeah, hi. Welcome to be here.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. We had a pretty good conversations, and we did a bit of back and forth. So I'm always glad to do that. You can build a little bit of a rapport and get to know a person a little bit better that way. So, thanks for doing the show, man. I really do appreciate
I love talking about these topics. So anybody I can pin down, I'm gonna have a conversation. So
it.
I'm glad
Yeah, I
glad
hear
to be
you.
here.
Yeah, man. I hear you. I mean, I'm the same way. It's hard for me to go anywhere and have people, not ask me about this kind of stuff, and of course I do paranormal and UFO aliens and a bunch of other stuff, so but Bigfoot, that's in my wheelhouse. That's what I know, and that's what I really enjoy talking about, man. It's just a passion, and I enjoy doing this, and part of the reason why I did this podcast was just to get good information out there and talk to good people, like yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what got you started into this crazy field that we're both entangled in.
Yeah. So Bigfoot's always been one of those subjects that has interested me. I was the kid in middle school, elementary school, going through the libraries, finding any sort of cryptid book and checking them out and reading everything I could. But I still didn't put a whole lot of stock into it. Um, Not until later. I always thought it was cool, but I thought like the Loch Ness monster was where it's at. But as I got older and heard more stories, it's kind of done a 180, and I started hearing more and more stories around here in Indiana, and I was like, "There's no way. There's no way." Like I grew up here. You expect to hear something far off, distant woodlands, and when you think of Indiana, I think of cornfields for the most part. Um, and so it was just crazy hearing these stories from my state. And eventually I heard enough of them and I was like, you know what? I'm done just hearing. I need to go out and see for myself. And so I started going out with some friends and looking around in this state and was quickly surprised that we do in fact have them in Indiana. So
Yeah, I've actually heard some encounters from Indiana. I think it's a lot more active than what people think, you
hmm
know. But before we get into Bigfoot, I wonder, you brought up the Loch Ness monster. What are your
yeah,
thoughts on that?
I think I have fallen out of kind of the recent happenings with that.
Right.
So all the information I have with that is probably 10, 20 years old. But I'm of the opinion with that framework that it's more than likely just seals or otters or um, sturgeons, just misidentification. Um, I don't think that there's anything. I don't think there's a giant plesiosaur running around in Loch Ness. Um, would love to be wrong.
Right.
Absolutely love to be wrong, but it just doesn't seem very likely.
Right. But there are still some groups that are very, very serious. You still go out and look for this creature, and of
Yeah.
course not just in Loch Ness, but everywhere. And so, what do you think about water cryptids in general? Do you think there are cryptids out there that people just haven't discovered or haven't really acknowledged?
Yeah, probably. Our waterways are a vast, unknown for a lot of places. Um, we can only see so deep, and things move around. There's definitely a possibility for there to be something swimming around.
Yeah, I think I've heard the expression. We know more about the moon than we do about the oceans. You know,
Yeah, yeah. The oceans, particularly, they're vastly underexplored.
right?
So,
You know, I was at this convenience store out near the Sam Houston Forest where I go do my research, Bigfoot research, and I was there, and a young lady was like, "Hey, whose truck is that?" I was with a friend of mine, and he has Bigfoot stickers all over his truck, and I said, "Yeah, that's a friend of mine's truck." And she says, "Yeah," she goes, "I've seen one before," and so she told me the story, and then she's like, "But I want to tell you another story." She goes, "It's pretty crazy," and I was like, "Okay, cool, go ahead." But she was telling me that when she was younger, that she used to go to her grandparents' house for like the summer, and it was in California, and I don't know if they lived along the beach or if they just had like a big lake that their house was part of, part of the property. But she said she would go to the dock and she would go swimming, and at the bottom there was this big crevice. And when she
oh,
was little, yeah, and when she was little, she was she was just too small to swim down that far. So as she got older, she would always try and try. And she said one day she finally decided, you know what, I'm gonna make it down there today. So she started swimming down there, and she said she almost got to the bottom, and she realized she was running out of air, and that she needed to get back up to the top. And she actually realized that I'm not gonna be able to make it, right? And she started swimming up back towards the surface, and she goes, I was ready to get out of air, and she goes, and these two hands came in front of my face like this, and it opened up like that, and about the size of her head. And she goes, there's big old air bubble just enveloped her head, and she breathes it in, and she was able to make it to the top.
wow,
Yeah,
that's
and that was one of
amazing.
the crazy. Yeah, and it's like this is a young woman. I mean, she maybe 2021 in a convenience store. I mean, for her to just to make that up,
Right.
just didn't seem likely. So I wonder what happened in that situation.
Yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
mean, you really can only take their word for it in a lot of
right?
these
Yeah.
these situations. We're not there, and as fantastical as a lot of these experiences happen, we've all had fantastical experiences happen to us.
Right. Yeah.
Especially the more you get out there and live life and you know explore the unknown. There's just a lot of fantastic, interesting things that just have to be out there.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, I've had paranormal experiences. I've seen a UFO. I researched Bigfoot, so who am I to tell somebody that's not what happened to you? You imagine the whole thing.
All right,
Uh,
right. I mean, yeah, you stick around long enough, you'll eventually start having these experiences. I know I had one kind of weird UFO thing happen before, and it's it's like I said, the more you're in this, it just seems like these experiences happen more and more. So
right. So, when did you start going out doing your Bigfoot thing, and what were some of your earlier experiences and encounters, if you've had any?
yeah, so 2015 was when me and a coworker we both decided to go out and check out a spot, and we just kind of picked a spot at random in southern Indiana. When you start looking at the maps, southern Indiana is really a lot more wooded than you would expect. Uh,
Mm.
I think some somebody who was familiar with bushcraft and didn't want to be seen could easily walk from one side of the state to the other and have no problems. So add on to that some a creature that doesn't need to cook its food and doesn't really need shelter, and there's plenty of space down there, definitely. So, but yeah, that's when we started with 2015, and our first hike was disappointing. We didn't really see anything. We just got out there, had a good day, got a little bit lost, but we managed. And then the next time, about 2 weeks later, I think I went back out there by myself, parked in the exact same spot, and we just went. I went on the opposite side of the road, and it changed everything. Absolutely changed everything. Um, at that time, I had started listening to a guy named Nathan Rio, Utah Sasquatch, and he was talking about stick structures and different things to look at and how to follow them and find more. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. Let's see if there's any validity to that. And so I got out there and started walking up this hill, and I started noticing all these like leans that were up against sticks, and every single one of them was facing the same direction. And there had to have been like 15, 20 of them. And I was like, that's really weird. Like, I didn't expect to see that. And, you know, the one thing about stick structures is like 80, 90% of them could easily be described as natural if you see them by themselves. It's when you start getting a conglomerate of them, just thing after thing after thing, that it really starts to paint a bigger picture. And we have found that when you kind of pay attention to them and follow where they seem to go, that they lead to bigger and more ornate structures. And that's where we've had a lot of our experiences. Is while we've been following these, we've noticed things start following us, or we'll get wood knocks, or we'll get whoops and things like that. That if you had just picked a random direction and walked, like probably wouldn't have gotten that. And it's only when we're following these that we start to get that activity. So it's really interesting. Um, but yeah, that first time I went out there, I started seeing more and more of these, and went up and over a hill and down another hill. Kind of took a break for lunch and was hanging out and just thinking I could take a nap. Like, it's really peaceful out here, really enjoying it. And then all of a sudden I shoot up and I'm spinning around, and my body has reacted to something that I'm not aware of. And I'm spinning around, acting like a gunshot just went over the top of my head. And I'm looking every which way, and I'm like, hold on, hold on. Why am I reacting this way? What's going on? And I'm like, I didn't hear anything. I don't see anything. I'm fine. But I was a little creeped out because I'd never had that reaction before, and I wasn't sure what was going on. And so I continued on, and then I got some wood knocks and a whoop, and decided I had had enough for that day and turned around and quickly went back home. So it was just a very eye-opening experience that I didn't expect to happen. And even though I was out there looking for it, like, you don't really expect it to happen. So, but that was exciting, and ever since then I've been hooked, absolutely hooked.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to that story. So when I first started going out, I was basically just doing hikes, and I was taking my family. Just
Yeah.
I guess in retrospect, I was using them for bait.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Uh, but yeah, I was taking them out, and I did a couple of camp outs too. But then I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do like a full-on expedition. Invite a couple of guys to come out there with me, and this is what we're gonna do. Right, we're gonna actually, take this a little bit more serious.
Uh-huh.
And man, I pulled up in our location that we go to now, and as soon as I got off the truck, started hearing wood knocks.
Yeah.
You know, and this was like, man, 11, 12 o'clock. You know, and noontime, right? And I'm setting up my tent, hearing wood knocks. I'm like, holy cow! As a matter of fact, at this point, my friend Shane, I hadn't even met him face to face yet. Kind of like us, right?
Uh-huh.
You know, and so Shane gets there, and we say our hellos and stuff like that, and good to meet you, and start hearing wood knocks. I'm like, holy cow, man, this is a good area. Which we had heard that it was a good area, and then my friend Armando shows up, and so we're sitting out there, and I mean, in like all night, we're hearing wood knocks, just like wood knocks, and we're hearing a lot of movement. My friend Armando actually had to leave early. He had to go take his kids to school. He didn't live too far from that area, but so he left. It was just me and Shane, and we're hearing wood knocks. We're hearing branches snap, from all around us, and it
Yeah.
was a pretty scary experience, for our first time really doing it and getting that kind of activity.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man, yeah, I, I, I think we thought about leaving a couple of times because we were standing shoulder to shoulder, but he was facing one direction, I was facing the other direction, and he was like, "Hey, man, did you hear that? Did you hear that?" I'm like, "Yeah, did you hear that branch snap?" He's like, "No, man, there was like two big uh, footballs from over here." I'm like, "No, I didn't hear that. I heard the branch snap." We
Yeah.
were hearing all this stuff simultaneously, but we stayed, we toughed it out, which I'm glad we did because
Wow.
we actually got a bunch of audio over those 2 or 3 nights that we were there, and we got a bunch of wood knocks and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool, and I still go there to this day. We always get some pretty good activity there. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
for
a good.
sure. It's funny how quickly things can get serious when you're out there, and you can make all these plans in the world, when you're safely at home sitting on the couch, but once you're out there and you're actually having things happen, it's a whole new other story, especially if you're doing it at night. Like that's I'm not a big fan of going out at night. I like being able to see what's around me. um, but you definitely get some results that way, you know so
Yeah, as a matter of fact, in that same area, uh, we had went out there. It was like during the week. A friend of mine named Jacob, he actually had a really good encounter. I don't. There was a guy, I can't remember his name. He passed away, but his name was Brett or Brent. I don't remember. But he had his own podcast also,
Hmm.
and I heard Jacob's story on that show first, where he talked about he was like here in Texas. He was driving down the road. He was going to work, and they saw what looked like a bear on the side of the road. So they were like, "There's no bear here in Texas, right?" So they pulled up next to it, and it's this freaking big wolf-like creature,
Oh wow.
And they had I believe they had an F-250. It was a four-door, the crew cab, extra long bed,
Hmm.
and it was just as long as the truck, right? And
Wow.
he's leaning out of the passenger side window. He's looking down at this thing, and he's like, "Dude, he had the like big 2-inch teeth. There was blood that was still dripping out of its mouth. He saw its claws. He saw its tail. He saw even its feet.
Hmm.
Uh, and so this boss was like, "Hey, let's put it in the back of the truck." He's like, "Man, we're not going to do all that. And he said, "If it's still here when we come back, then then we'll pick it up, right?"
Uh-huh.
So they went, they did their work thing, and when they came back, it was gone, and even the blood was gone,
Huh.
which was kind of weird.
Yeah, yeah,
But
definitely.
I had met Jacob, and he came here to Houston for his job, and he's like, "Hey, can we go out to that area?" And someone from Australia, and how you doing? Thank you, Sue. So we went up to the same Houston, and we met him there, and we're standing around in this little clearing, and when I mean a clearing, I mean there's probably nothing around us for a good, I don't know, 40 yards all the way around us, right? And we're getting ready to pull all our stuff up. We're putting up we all had guns and we all had flashlights and stuff. So I was in my truck putting my stuff up, and I hear something hit the ground, and I figured that one of those guys dropped a flashlight, right? And they're like, "Hey, Joe, come here, check this out, check this out." And I walk over there. I say, "Yeah, what's up?" And they have their flashlight at the ground. There's this big ass rock laying right in the middle of all of us. And they
Uh-huh.
said, "Dude, that rock just came flying in." And I'm like, "Yeah, I heard it. I thought one of you guys dropped the flashlight or something."
Yeah.
And so we said, "Well, let's just stick around here a little bit longer." So we're standing there talking. Like I said, it was me, Armando. that guy Jake, and then my son. We were just standing out there, and then I hear Jake goes, "Hey, there's some eye shine. There's eye shine." And we looked, and as soon as he said that, and I turned around, I looked, I saw these two red eyes just turn to the right and just walk off into the woods.
Man.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. So then I switched spots with Jacob because I wanted to keep my eye on that area of the woods. And sure enough, I guess maybe 5, 10 minutes later, I saw that red eye shine again. Except this time it was at ground level.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and when I hollered out there it goes, it disappeared. It was, yeah, but that's a good area, man. I like that area. Do you have an area that you yourself go to?
Yeah, I've got 2 or 3 places that I try and go to regularly. Um, and I've gone to a lot of the state parks in Indiana, and some of them I've had some luck, some other ones I haven't. I was just out last weekend at a new nature preserve with another coworker. He wanted to go check out some caves, and I was going to go check out the nature preserve, see if there was anything, and I didn't have any luck. Everything they had a fire like the last year or two, and so everything was all kind of clear and burned, and there just wasn't a whole lot going on. But we did find some caves and check those out, and that was fun. Um, that's the great thing about this is even when we get out and we don't have anything happen, like it's a nice day, we're getting exercise, we're in the woods, fantastic. There's really no downside,
Right.
unless you step on a rattlesnake or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
that almost happen about 3 years ago. Came up on a giant rattlesnake. It was a similar situation. It was a new uh, preserve that me and another person went to, and they just had a fire recently, and everything was all clear, and just stumbled upon this giant rattlesnake, and I was about 3 foot from it before it rattled. So that was,
Oh wow.
yeah, it was exciting. It was probably 6 foot long. It was ginormous, um, but thankfully, for the most part, uh, we don't have too much to worry about around here. We do have an occasional cougar that runs around, but we
Mhm.
supposedly don't have any bears in the state. Um, and I've seen trees that are like all shredded from like a
Yeah.
cougar mark in it. Definitely like higher up than I am tall, and so
Right.
it's interesting. Um,
Hmm.
but I can't officially say that I've had a sighting. I've had 2 kind of maybe experiences.
Okay.
Um, One of them was, I think, around 2017. Me and the first guy that I started going out with, we were out together, and it seems like every time we were out together, we have something really weird happen. But we were out at the spot, and we were walking along kind of an old logging road, and there's a clear patch of dirt, and so I just bent down to see if there was any tracks or anything. And about 30 yards from us, something jumped up and took 3. It sounded very much like steps. It was either 3 bipedal steps or a 4-legged creature bounded with all 4 legs 3
Right.
times, and we heard it audibly stop. It was boom, 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 and then it stopped. We're like, it's right there. And neither of us saw it, and so we start moving towards it. I'm like, okay, well, it's right there, so we're gonna try and jump it. And same thing. We get a little closer, and it takes like 3 or 4 steps this time. Boom, boom, boom. This time we both caught a glimpse of it, and we just saw something maybe about deer height, kind of hunched over, and it
Mhm.
moved off into the brush and stopped again by a tree. And we are like, what was that? And
Hmm.
if it had stopped there, I would have said, it was just a deer, even though that's not typical deer behavior. They're going to snort and they're going to go and keep going until you can't hear them or see them anymore. And what it did was stop. And so we pushed towards it for the second time and get to where we last heard it. And we can't see anything. We start kind of spreading apart, covering more ground. And I hear something move behind us and go across the old logging path and go into the patch of woods behind us. And as I turn to kind of look that way, we hear something to our left huff at us. And then whatever had moved across started knocking on trees. And we just started hearing this tap, 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 tap. And then it got answered in front of us by another tap, 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 tap. And this went back and forth. And like you could hear them moving a little bit, and then they would tap again. And it was like they were triangulating where they were. And there was definitely two of them, and they were just tapping back and forth. And that, like, what does that? You know, coyotes and deer don't tap on trees and walk around you. So,
Right.
we caught a glimpse, but we didn't see enough to see a shape, to see an outline. I would love to say that was a Bigfoot, and I don't know what else it could have been, but it just wasn't that, dead to rights sighting, and that we all kind of want to have. And then
Yeah.
the second one was a little more visual. Happened just last year, actually. It happened in October at this place that was nearby, and it was actually back behind a graveyard and a place where I had been with two other people last July, and we were kind of spread out a little bit, but within visual sight of each other. And we all like I walked into an area, and like all the hairs on my neck went up, and I was like, "Whoa! Something's watching me." And so I stop and I start looking around, and I noticed that once they get to kind of the same point, they cross this kind of line, and they both do the exact same thing. And we're all like, "Yeah, there's something going on." And then we started getting knocks that were loud on three different sides of us. I actually have audio of that. I don't know if you had gotten a chance to listen to any of the audio that I had sent you.
No, it won't. It's not gonna let me play it on
Okay.
this format. Yeah.
So, yeah, and so we heard loud knocks going on three sides of us for about 20 minutes. And at one point, a rock got thrown at them, and we just hung out until it stopped. But I went back to the same location by myself in October. And as I got a little bit past that same area, I look up, and there's a big drop off where it goes down a hill, and it's pretty steep. And I'm looking out that way, and I just see this big, round, black object. And it's a little bit bigger than a basketball, and it's solid black. I'm looking at it, and I'm like, is that like the end of a burned out log, or what? Like, we don't have like porcupine or you know raccoons aren't that solid black color. So I'm like, I don't know what this is. I'm like, maybe it's a log. And so I'm looking at it, and it's round except the top is kind of conical. And I'm like really questioning myself, like, am I seeing what I think I might be seeing? And so I look down to grab my phone out of my pocket, of course. And when I look back up, it's gone. And I was like, is that really, like, I don't see it. Whatever I was looking at moved. That's one of the things I know for sure. It was far enough away that I couldn't make out any details. It was just this black, round object with kind of a conical point to it. And all of a sudden it was gone. And so I'm just hanging out and looking and trying to see if I see it again, but I don't. And so was that? Maybe. I don't know what else it could have been. But it was definitely weird. For sure I know I saw something black that I looked down, looked back up, and it was gone. So it moved, whatever it was. So unfortunately that's been my two maybes.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've had a couple of those, like, what did I see or what did I just witness kind of
Uh-huh.
stuff. Uh, yeah, I was on a hike, and I was this person that I'm no longer seeing, but she was like, "Hey, look, come here," and I'm like, "What's up?" She goes, "I just saw something move over there," and she pointed. This maybe, I don't know, 60, 70 feet from where we were at, and she's like, "It went from one tree to the other." So I'm kind of looking around and trying to see if I can see, and I see this reddish orange fur go from behind from one tree to the other. I'm like, yeah. I said, there it goes right there, and I pointed. She goes, no, 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 not there. It's over here, more off to the left. And I'm like, okay. So my brother-in-law was with me, and I was like, hey, Patrick, let's go check it out. So we walk over there, and we're looking around. We don't see anything. We come back, and she's like, no, no, whatever it was way taller than you, Patrick. She says, because I couldn't even see y'all because of the brush was so high. And not that I'm like really short. I'm like 5'8", not too tall, not too short, right? And she's like, I couldn't even see you or Patrick. She goes, like, this thing was like right here. She goes, this, no, she goes, you and Patrick were like right here. This thing was way up here.
Wow.
And it made sense because the flash of fur that I saw was also, way up in that area. And I was, once I came back to where I was standing originally, I was able to gauge a lot better that, yes, yeah, whatever it was way taller than either one of us. And so she was just talking to me about it. She told me that what she saw was gray. It was more gray, and I'm like, okay. So this is when I first started going out too. And so as I get more and more into the field and start knowing and talking to a lot more people, and I started talking about the particular area. Come to find out, a big gray one had actually been seen in that area several times.
Yeah.
That was yeah, so that was pretty good validation that that she saw something and that I saw something too. But as to what we saw, neither one of us really know or could say for sure. That was that was one of the better sightings that I had, and if whatever you want to call it, sighting, I don't
Uh-huh.
know. And then the second time was maybe 6 7 months later. I was at that spot camping out that I told you about that we had just went to. It was that same night when I first met Shane, and then Armando came, and Armando passed away a couple of years ago. Good guy, man. And, he had his truck parked on the edge of the camp. It was under a tree, but it was like on the edge, where the overhang was at from the tree. It was a big tree, and we hear something hit his truck, but it didn't sound like it fell. It sounded like a side shot, like something hit it on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And we we stood up and we're like, you know, having that oh hell moment, right? And Armando says, "Let me get my flashlight." He grabs his flashlight. He had this big bright flashlight. And we're walking around his truck. We're looking on top of his truck, in the bed of his truck, and there's nothing there. So we're looking on the side. We can't tell if anything hit it or not, but like I said, it just sounded like a side shot, right? And then maybe a couple hundred feet away, there's a pond. So we walk over to the pond, and we're on this side of the pond. And he has a flashlight. He's going from his right to the left. And right when he gets towards the center, there's these two big hairy legs that jump out of the light when the light hits it. And
Yeah.
that was all I saw were those two big hairy legs.
Wow.
So that was that's still something that even now to this day that I question myself about. And that was like I don't know 2015, 2016 when that
Uh-huh.
happened. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I,
it
and I,
is. Sticks
and I
with you.
see those. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I had I kick myself all the time. Every time I think about this, I was out once in I think it was about 2017, 2018. I was with two friends. One of them who's been doing this about 40 years, and he had a gifting area that his name's Jay Stewart. He he's been around for a while, but he's got this gifting area, and he we were out there with him, and every once in a while he'll see him out there, and we had gone out there with him, and I left an audio recorder kind of nestled into a tree, and we were hanging out back there, and then I got a call from my wife saying that she was up at the park gate, and we were going to camp that weekend, and she wanted me to come get her. So I walked out by myself, and they stayed around. And as soon as I got out of sight, they both turned and looked up, and they both saw one clear as day walk right across the path 5 feet away from my audio recorder. And so they had this really good sighting that I just barely missed. And honestly, it was probably because I left that they had the sighting. Because every time we had been there, everybody goes at the same time and everybody leaves at the same time. So this was the first time we had split up and kind of done something different. And so they saw it walk across the audio recorder. And what's really neat is like I got their sighting on camera, and you can hear something shuffling along in the leaves and going right past, and it's actually being followed by a blue jay at the time. And so it's one of my favorite pieces of audio. If they hadn't have seen it, like you just would have heard something kind of shuffling around and a bird going off. But because they had seen it and I got their reaction and, you know, the noise, it's one of my favorite clips that I've captured. It's really cool. So,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, I just missed it.
Right. Yeah, man. That's too bad.
Yeah.
That would have been great to see. Did did the creature know that they were there? Do you know? Did they talk about that?
It did not react to them.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I said it was really quick. That's the common thing is it went across from their left to the right and into a thick patch of brush, which uh, we have heard things going on in there. When we've gone back there, we've heard sticks breaking and leaving the audio recorder there overnight. We've picked up some vocalizations and uh, a lot of brush movement. Uh, but yeah, it just walked across, and they like kind of whooped at it, and they're like woo woo, and it went across and kept on going. Completely ignored them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Do you do calls when you go out? Do you make loops or
no,
do anything? Okay.
no, it's fun and it's tempting to go out there and try and do something like that, but it just seems like the few times that we tried early on never got anything. And that seems to be commonly reported um, with a lot of other groups is that they just don't respond to vocals a whole lot, at least not anymore. Maybe if we went out at night, it might be a little bit of a different story, but during the day, they don't seem to respond to vocals. I have had reactions to knocks before, and we don't do a whole lot of knocks, but every once in a while, if we're sitting around, we get to a spot and we're hanging out, we'll start to hear something. We might do a knock and see if we get a response back, and we have on a couple occasions. Uh, I'll say that 9 times out of 10, it's usually not a loud bang. It's usually a really subtle, kind of quiet tapping,
Right.
and so we'll get those responses back, and we'll hear things move into us, and kind of one time we were sitting on top of a hill and we heard it come just to the crest where it could kind of peek over and see us. And as soon as it got to that point, it quit altogether. But up till then, it was tapping every time we did.
Right.
So,
So, do you think it was tapping on something, or you think it was making a noise with
I
like
don't
its
know.
tongue or anything like that?
I
Okay.
don't know. A
Yeah.
lot of people go both ways. I will say
Right.
I
Yeah.
have found trees out in the woods that look like they have been slammed with something. They've kind of got that compression mark and where the
Right.
bark's roughed off, just in that narrow. It looks like they were hit with a baseball bat. Um,
Mhm.
but I've only seen that like on 2 occasions. Uh, I think it's quite likely that they do a lot of it with their mouths.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah. We thought we heard what sounded like a rock clack,
uh-huh.
like two rocks clacking together. And then like weeks later, Armando, we were talking. He goes, "Dude," he goes, "that sounds more like a tongue pop." And so like the more I listen to it, the more it sounds like that's what it sounds like.
Yeah,
And I'm like, yeah, you know what? You may be right about that. It may just be like a tongue pop. You
yeah,
know.
yeah. We've heard that on a couple occasions, and yeah, I
Mhm.
don't know. Definitely that.
And we've heard so many wood knocks. It's crazy. When we first started hearing them, it's pretty amazing. Now I can hear them and just keep on going about my day. you know,
Yeah,
uh, and unfortunately, the areas where we hear them coming from, because if it's somebody, man, they're crazy for going that deep into the woods or that thick of brush, right? And like for me, I hate going through thick brush because of ticks.
uh huh.
Ticks are pretty bad down here in Texas. They don't really carry a lot of diseases that they do up north,
Yeah,
right? But I still don't want ticks crawling on me and getting stuck on my body because I've had that before and it's not nice, man.
Yeah,
You know.
unfortunately, it's just a part of it. We see them all the
Right.
time. I usually spray down my pants with permethrin and the night before,
Okay.
and it's
Okay.
a contact pesticide that will kill them when they're crawling on your pants. And
Mhm.
doesn't hurt anything else, I guess, other than insects. So
Okay.
it works for sure. It definitely does because we go
My
through
son
some
bought
thick
me
stuff.
something for Father's Day. It's in the big yellow jug. Well, I don't want to say it's big. It's I don't know, maybe a quart. You know,
Uh-huh.
and that's what it's for. It's like to repel all kinds of insects, including ticks, and
Yeah.
you can also spray down your gear with it. But
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. But, that might
Yeah.
be what he bought me.
Yeah, yeah, it works for sure. You want to spray it on the clothes when you're not wearing them. You don't want it wet on your skin, but once it dries on your clothes, it's perfectly safe for you to handle and whatnot. But
Hmm.
it works fantastically. So,
Okay, well, good. Man, that's good to know because we were riding down the road one time and Walter goes, "Hey, look, Joe," and he looks and on his arm, a freaking tick crawling right across his arm, and he just
uh-huh.
flicked it out the window.
Yeah,
And I'm like, man, I hate them damn things.
yeah, they're not fun, and I mean, you find them every year, even regardless. They'll drop down on you, and you know,
Yeah,
if you're in the woods, you're gonna find them, unfortunately. But
right, right.
just catching them before they latch on is key. So
Yeah, and down here, snakes too are in the bushes, so you got to
uh-huh.
be careful with that. And you talked about walking up on that rattler. We've had two of our guys walk up on copperheads.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, yeah, yeah. Walter was standing around, trying to survey the area. He had been standing in that spot for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and when he looked down, he was standing right above a snake, and then he didn't even know it. It was just curled up.
Yeah, yeah,
And then my friend Sean, we were walking through a creek, and it was a dried up creek. It was still a little bit moist, it was still a little
uh-huh.
bit muddy. And he's walking on the creek, and that's why he was looking down. When he went around the bend, there were two copperheads right there, having relations with each other,
Yeah,
so they didn't pay him any attention. But
yeah, yeah. I love snakes. So you still don't want to step on one, but
right,
they don't spook me when I'm out in the woods, and they're not super common up here. So it's kind of a rare treat, so long as you don't get bit. Uh,
yeah, yeah. Well, they're super common down here, and I don't like snakes anyway, so you know, I'm usually on the lookout for snakes. I think I'm more on the lookout for snakes than I am Bigfoot when I'm out there.
yeah, well, you're definitely gonna run into one of them eventually. So. Uh,
So, do you do overnight campouts at
I,
all?
I I go camping a lot, um, but I've not done too many overnight like bigfooting. I've not done too many night bigfooting. I've done a couple. Um, like I said, I prefer to stick to the daytime, but you do get some results at night. So I need to make a habit of doing that more. I
Hmm.
actually just bought a infrared camera that was
Oh, nice.
like $40. I saw somebody reviewing it on TikTok. They got it on the Timu website.
Mhm.
They said they bought it because it was cheap and they were just going to tear it apart, and it actually worked. And so they're like, for $40, like it's worth it. And so I went ahead and bought one, and I've used it a couple times, and it it does seem to do the trick. Um, it doesn't like anything close. It's kind of constantly in a zoomed in state, and so it doesn't do well for anything closer than like 50 feet.
Okay.
But yeah, it's so far it seems to work really well for 40
Okay.
bucks. So
Okay.
I'm gonna try and use that a little bit more.
Yeah, my friend Ernie has one that you can actually mount to your rifle.
Uh huh.
Even though you're not supposed to,
Yeah.
hunt with it,
Right.
and which he doesn't, man. He's a really good hunter, man. Uh, he doesn't need to do that at night. He'll go out any time of the year and catch whatever he needs to catch, right? Uh, but man, he hooked it up to his rifle, and we're looking through it. It looks like freaking daytime looking
Yeah.
through this thing, man. And you can see far with this thing too. So yeah, and he actually got me to put together my first parabolic. parabolic mic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have one yourself or not,
I
but if
don't.
you, dude, you can go get one and make one with a PVC pipe and one of those squirrel baffles that they put on the bird feeder so the squirrels won't get in.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, dude, $30 you can make one. It's super easy. And then I just spray painted mine green and that was it.
yeah.
But he made one and we were out in the woods. It was late at night and he was like, I saw his eyes get really big and he looked at me and goes, Joe, you gotta hear this. I'm like, okay. So I put the earbuds in my ear and I'm listening. And it sounded like Darth Vader was out there breathing in the woods.
Wow.
Yeah. And we were out there and the game warden, and this is like maybe midnight, right around midnight, and the game warden pulls up on us. And when I tell people that, they're like, dude, we've never heard of a game warden out that late at night.
Uh-huh.
And so we're standing out there and we see this truck come up and even though it was dark, you could tell it was a white truck, and I said, okay, that's got to be a game warden, right?
Uh-huh.
And he pulls up, he stops, and as I seen him coming, I pulled my wallet out. I had my concealed carry license and I had my driver's license. I had it in my hand, so when he got off, he could look at it. And he looks at it, hands it right back to me. He's like, "What are you guys doing out here?" I'm like, we're just listening to the sounds of nature. That's all. That's all I told him, and he got this big smile. He goes, "Have you heard anything you shouldn't be hearing?" He just told me like that. And I said, "No." I said, "What do you mean?" And he just kind of started laughing, and he goes, "Is there anybody else out here?" And I said, "We saw some flashlights down the road, even though we didn't."
Uh-huh.
He says, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah, man." He jumped in his truck and he hauled ass down that way.
Yeah.
So the second time that happened to us, we had the his parabolic mic again, and we were at a different area. And I'll be damned if the damn uh, game warden didn't pull up again. It was a different guy this time,
Mm.
and this was probably 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. He's like, "What are you guys doing?" I said, "Well, we're just listening to the sounds of nature." And he's like, "Okay." And we had actually heard a bobcat, and this sucker came right up on us. I mean, he was within 10, 15 feet of us,
Wow.
behind some bushes, and he was hissing. And we're like, "Okay, this is a bobcat." And we all had our guns out, and we're like, "If that son of a bitch comes out, we better unload on him, right?" you
Yeah.
know. And then the game warden pulls up, and he's like, "What's going on?" And we were telling him. He's like, "Okay." He goes, "You guys be careful." He goes, "You see anybody else out here?" And I told him the same thing. I saw some flashlights down that way. Man, he jumped in his truck and he hauled ass out there.
Uh-huh.
So that's what I would tell people. If you want to get rid of a game warden, tell him you saw some flashlights down that way. They'll
Yeah.
move. You know.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. But yeah. So now I have my own mic, and dude, it works great, and it was super easy to put together. You can find the tutorials on YouTube. And, like I said, man, $30, man. You can put it together. I went and got my mic from the dollar store.
Uh-huh.
And I hooked it up to my little Sony recorder, and shoot, man, it picks up great. So
Yeah,
I'm not,
yeah. Yeah, I use a Tascam for recording audio when I'm out hiking, and it does
okay.
pretty good.
Yeah,
It doesn't pick up much. Like if you're walking around,
yeah,
it's really just going to hear you sloughing through the leaves and breaking sticks and things. But
okay.
every once in a while, it catches something, and it's great to have. So
Do you ever leave recorders or trail cams out?
a couple times we have. Interesting story. One of the guy that has the gifting area, he started leaving a trail camera out there, about 2 years ago. And the very first night that he left it out there, um, he had there was like a blade of grass that slowly came onto the screen from the side and then went back out and then came in from the top of the screen, went back out, and came back in like one more time. And something was definitely behind the camera. And this is one blade of grass coming in from multiple directions and just kind of
Hmm.
seeing what the camera was. And then he didn't get anything else other than deer the rest of the 2 months that he had it out there. So that was an interesting thing that we noticed. The very first night, you got that weirdness.
Hmm.
So yeah, truck cameras don't seem to work. Um, I don't know if it's because they can see infrared or if they hear them. I know most of the time you get like a deer or something that's up close to the camera, it's looking right at it.
Right. Yeah.
These animals know that they're there, so I don't think you're
Right.
fooling anything. Um,
Right.
so I just the audio recorders seem to work better for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
Yeah. 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 I love my recorders. I got like 3 or 4 of them, and we'll leave them out for 2 or 3 days at a time. You know, um, the trail cams, I leave them out almost every night. We go out there, and I don't pick anything up, but I'm always going to take it out anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say, what I mean by we don't ever get anything on our cameras, meaning we don't get any Bigfoot. We get
Yeah.
plenty of other animals,
Right.
But yeah, you know what? You're right about that because if you look online, then you see raccoons, squirrels, deer, even hogs looking right at the camera,
Oh
and
yeah.
some of them even come up to it and look
Hmm.
right into the lens.
Yeah.
So yeah, they know it's there. We had some friends down in South Texas, and they've got I bet they've got over 500-600 acres with their family, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just theirs, like uncles and aunts and cousins, but they all share it and they all hunt it, right? So they had like a boatload of cameras out there, and one day they came to go look at their cameras, and every single camera had the lens poked out.
Wow.
Something poked the lens out of all of them. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. That is
Yeah,
pretty cool. So
yeah,
hopefully, just keep going out. Hopefully, I have that sighting. I've not really had anything, part of the woo or weirdness. A couple
right,
things, but for the most part, I tend to think that they're flesh and blood. One of the things that I stick to is I'm not going to use an ordinary, or I'm not going to use an extraordinary explanation for an ordinary phenomenon. A
right,
lot of normal everyday animals do some really crazy, extraordinary things, and if we're constantly making that leap to it being paranormal, even though that same trait is expressed in other animals,
right,
and I think it's doing a disservice. An example is there was a really great set of videos that I actually stumbled across on TikTok where this guy owned a nature preserve and he was leaving out cameras just on a game trail and just seeing what wildlife was going through there. He's not a Bigfooter at all. And one day his camera disappeared. And he's like, well, where the heck? And, he didn't have it mounted. It was just sitting on the ground and on a little tripod, and it disappeared. And so he went out there, spent a couple days looking for it, couldn't find it. It's just like, man, that sucks. So he went and bought another one and set it out in the same spot. And like a day or two later, he gets on camera a coyote bringing the original camera back to the spot and dropping it off. And at that point, he had the original camera and he could see that a coyote picked up, stole his camera, and then returned it like 4 or 5 days later to the exact same spot. And that's one of those things that surprises you. 10
right,
out of 10, a Bigfoot is going to say, what other animal is going to take something and then bring it back to the exact same spot? Well,
right,
apparently coyotes do that.
right. Yeah.
So
And so that's one of the things I have with gifting. Because different animals certainly will bring stuff to your area where if they know you're there, whether it's your house or your campsite. I mean, raccoons will do it, possums will do it,
yeah,
crows will do it, other birds will do it.
right.
So and now you're telling me this about the coyote. So apparently a coyote will do it too.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not completely sold on the gifting thing. Now something big and heavy
Uh-huh.
disappears and comes back, then I'll listen to you.
Yeah.
Like I did talk to a guy who had a chainsaw go missing and then show up. You
Mm.
know, you know. I don't know. Can a coyote take off with a chainsaw? Uh,
I don't know,
you know.
maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's kind of heavy, and at some point, even if you carry it off, I don't know if a coyote would be like, "I'm taking it back because this
right.
damn thing's too heavy,"
It's heavy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, my friend who has a gifting spot, he's had some interesting things, and then a lot of those, is it not?
right,
He has a lot of like clamshells that he lays out, and he'll put like marbles in them, and he'll like close it up, and he'll come back, and the marble will be gone, and maybe set laying on a different clamshell that is a little bit away, or I'll have him like sitting out, and the marbles will be beside the shells, and he'll come back, and the shells will be closed, and there'll be a marble inside. Uh,
Right.
so it's kind of interesting, you know.
Yeah.
That's all you can really say.
Right.
One thing I recently saw was I've heard reports of people finding like snakes tied up and like laid at their doorsteps and thinking maybe that's a gifting thing. I recently saw a video of a roadrunner uh, bringing like a snake that it was playing with and whatnot, and just leaving it at somebody's front door. So
Mm.
if you're in an area with roadrunners or
Right.
possibly other birds,
Right.
that could be uh, that could be a culprit. Not to say that Bigfoot doesn't also do those things,
Okay.
but it's inconclusive. You know.
Right. Yeah, and when you talked about the clams and the marbles or whatever that was inside them, uh, crows are problem solvers, and
Yep.
they love puzzles.
Yep.
So
Yep.
if maybe a crow saw it and was like, "Hey, this is pretty cool. I'm gonna do this and this."
Right.
It's a game. It's a puzzle.
Right.
But just about any kind of rodent, whether it be I don't know if you want to call a raccoon a rodent or not, but they're smart enough to figure this out too.
Uh
Hey,
huh.
you know what? This is a little game, and I'll do that too. So
Right.
yeah, it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is. So
But I think to stay locked in that is Bigfoot, it you're kind of murking the waters a little bit.
hmm.
You've got to look at all the possibilities.
Right.
Um, so I think that's really important for people to realize that. And so, like one of the things that I also say too. So, like I said, I'm into the paranormal.
Uh huh.
I think a lot of stuff that happens in the wood or the forest is paranormal.
Yeah.
Whether it's footsteps or stuff being thrown or even voices, you know. So I think people have to, you know, take that into consideration also.
Right. Right. Yeah. I fully agree. All I am a firm believer in the paranormal, and I think a lot of these experiences could go that way. I I have not personally had an experience that has led me to think that Bigfoot is paranormal. I would love to be proven wrong. I would love to have one of those experiences. That would be really exciting. But everything that I have experienced really fits into the theory that they are a flesh and blood of some sort. So, you
Right.
know, and there is a lot of weirdness that does go on with it, and I don't know, maybe. So,
Yeah,
uh,
and I also think that there are just different entities, that
mhm,
are out there too and that exist. Whether it's because I don't think Bigfoot is interdimensional. I don't think Bigfoot flies around in UFO.
uh-huh,
I don't think they jump through portals. I don't think they cloak. But that's not to say that there's not some kind of entity that does this stuff.
right.
And
And
so,
I mean,
and like I said at the beginning, I would never tell anybody that's not what you experienced, that's not what you saw, and that's not what happened.
right,
You know, especially when you talk to some of these people and they're like very, very centered people, very, very grounded people, and they say, "Hey, look, this is what happened to me," and they certainly believe that that happened to them, so I'm not going to call them a liar. But
right,
in my own opinion, and it might not mean nothing, I think it was something else.
yeah.
You know,
You know, and I guess on that subject, there's enough people having similar experiences like that that I have no doubt that it's happening. That
right,
people are seeing like shimmering shapes moving through the woods, or they're seeing like flashes of light and possibly something stepping out of a portal. I just don't know that what they're seeing is Bigfoot. You know
right,
that they're obviously not all of these people are crazy. They're
right,
seeing something. So I just haven't seen enough personally to say that those two things coincide. Um, they just might be two separate phenomenon that are happening in the same location.
right. Yeah, and that's what Sandra says. Even if you don't agree with someone's views, you should at least keep an open mind. And yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Because I think there's enough ridicule in this field. It shouldn't come from us. You
right,
know,
right,
um,
yeah.
you
And
know,
like I said, they're absolutely seeing something. I've had weird things happen in the woods that I I can't really explain, but I just haven't seen that it's connected. It might be.
Right.
It'd be great, but I haven't seen that connection. But I do know those things are happening. I just seems more likely that it's something else, uh,
Right.
which is exciting and I guess could be scary. But you know,
Yeah.
this world is
So
crazy.
yeah. As far as the woo thing goes, the only thing that ever happened to us was me and Walter went out and we bought those big packs of batteries. I don't know, 18 or 24 pack of batteries, like the
Uh-huh.
double A's, because his night vision runs on those. We bought two brand new packs. So we got out to the area that he had his encounter, and it's very active. And I think I sent you the picture of the hog.
Oh, uh-huh.
Did I send
Hmm.
it?
Hmm.
Okay, all in this same area. Uh, we get out there. We're trying to put batteries in, and not a battery one works.
Yeah.
Two brand new packs. So we stand out there. We got our recorders and trail cams out there. We spend a little bit of time, an hour and a half out there. We take off, come back home. We get to his house, try the batteries out, and they all work. Every single
Uh-huh.
one of them work, but they didn't work out there. So that was
Right.
the only kind of strange thing, And uh, you know, uh, so there you go. I have no explanation for that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I think a lot of us. I've definitely had batteries that were
Yeah.
dead that shouldn't have been. Um, Probably the weirdest thing that I had happen was the time I was back behind the graveyard with the two other guys, and we had all those knocks going off. The audio recorders, I had one, and one of my friends had one, and his quit recording audio, and mine picked up a weird electronic interference. It started
Oh,
buzzing. I've used this audio recorder for 7 years at this point. Never had this happen before, and it happened right when we started getting these knocks. Is we just got this weird electronic feedback, just buzzing through half of the experience, and it eventually stopped. And then uh, the audio recorder kind of didn't work right there for a couple weeks, and since then it's been fine. So I don't know if that was like an infrasound thing, which I wouldn't classify it as a woo thing because lots of animals do that again.
right,
Uh,
right,
but it's possible we got zapped that day. Um,
right,
that our
right.
electronics did. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, cool beans, man. We already went over our hour just for like a few minutes, but if you want to tell everybody how to get a hold of you or where to find you, I do have your TikTok in your bio or the
yeah, yeah.
description. So if anybody's interested in that, but go ahead and tell everybody
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
that's where I post a lot of my stuff. At least of the more interesting finds of my hikes is I'll put them up on my TikTok, which is the Forest Folks. And I think I sent you a link for it. But yeah, I'll put some of my more interesting things. I wish I could get out more than I do. Life is busy. I'm probably out like once a month or so, sometimes twice a month. Uh, During the nicer months, I don't get out very much in that like November to February time span. It's just a busy time and it's cold and I'm just not a big fan of that. But I'm always
Yeah,
looking. I'm always looking to get out. Always looking to meet up with somebody and go out and see things. And one thing I like to say to some of the people I've taken out who aren't believers is like I can't convince you that any of this is real. I can show you some things that will make you scratch your head. It's like I don't know how to explain that. But that's really weird. Um,
right.
just you just got to go out. So
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you on that, man. You got to get out there and it's always fun when you go out there and take different people out there, and and if anything, you're out in nature, and that's
right,
all that matters.
right,
Well, cool.
lots of fun. So
Well, cool beans, man. I appreciate you coming on the show, man. And if you have anything you want me to share or post for you, man, tag me in it, send it to me, whatever. I'll post it for you, and
okay,
yeah, yeah. But yeah, hold on real quick because there is this little story I want to tell you. I want to tell you off the air.
okay,
Um, Everybody else in the chat room, man, thanks a lot. Hey, thank you to you, Sandra. I always appreciate you when you join the show, Sandra. You're such a good I don't know if you're a subscriber. Are you a subscriber? But you're always here, so I really do appreciate it. And with all that being said, you guys have a great night, and I'll see you next Monday. I don't remember who I have on, but I'll have a show next Monday, of course. And we'll talk to you guys later. And hold on, real quick.